The hammer of justice came down in federal court today on a woman who stole more than $100 million from the government. The woman did this.
Janet Mello was born in 1966 in San Antonio, Texas. She grew up in a middle-class family, but her family's financial situation was difficult.
As a civilian worker at Fort Sam Houston, KENS 5 Earl Stoudemire breaks down her sentence and what led investigators to.
Janet's childhood was shaped by witnessing her family's struggles with money. Watching her family struggle to make ends meet every day, Janet learned from an early age that in order to succeed in life, she needed to work harder than others. These circumstances instilled in her a desire for independence and the pursuit of a better life. Growing up, she saw her family's financial difficulties and learned that in order to overcome them, she would need to be more determined. Childhood and early impressions. From a young age, Janet began to understand the hardships of life, but this also gave her an intense desire to rise above them. Observing her family's struggles, she became determined to achieve success through hard work. She realized early on that everything in life could be obtained through effort, but that greed and self-interest could sometimes be even more powerful. This would leave a lasting impact on her life. Throughout her school years, Janet was always a successful student, but she didn't just excel academically. She also stood out because of her strong social intelligence. She had a natural ability to influence those around her, which made her a popular student. These early experiences would prove crucial for her career later on. Her ability to build strong relationships with others would help her gain advantages in both her personal and professional life. The social relationships she built would be pivotal in her future career, helping her move ahead in the business world. During her childhood and adolescence, another aspect of her life stood out: social justice and inequality. Growing up in a family with limited means, Janet often felt marginalized. She saw the world as a place where a person could either fall behind or rise to the top based on their ability to adapt and manipulate their circumstances.
Also happening today, a woman will be sentenced for stealing more than $100 million from the government.
Now, she worked at Fort Sam and
For Janet, overcoming poverty meant not just making more money, but also gaining influence and respect in society. These impressions shaped her drive to achieve power, not just financially, but in a much larger sense. Education years and career start. Janet Mello's acceptance into Texas University marked a significant turning point in her life.
I have to say.
Janet Mello has been sentenced to serve 15 years in prison on 10 counts of mail fraud and falsifying tax returns.
Despite her family's financial struggles, Janet found a way to attend university by working part-time jobs to support herself. At Texas University, she majored in business and finance. Her education not only provided an academic foundation, but also laid the groundwork for her to build a strong professional career. Janet's success in university was driven by her determination to make something of herself and rise above her circumstances. Her academic achievements would later give her the opportunity to work with influential people in the business world. After completing her studies, Janet's life took a significant professional turn. She joined the U.S. Army as a civilian financial manager. This was the first major opportunity for her career. The position in the Army provided not only financial security, but also significant prestige and respect. This respect gave her access to important opportunities. The Army, with its structure and influence, enabled her to rise quickly in her career. But this rise would come with a heavy cost. The power she gained would eventually be misused for her personal gain. Joining the Army and the first signs of power. One of the first significant positions Janet held was at Fort Sam Houston Base, where she managed youth and children's grant programs. These programs involved large sums of money, and Janet found herself in control of considerable funds. The responsibility to manage these grants made her feel more powerful. But with this power came the temptation to abuse it. While managing funds for the Army, Janet began to realize that she could take advantage of the power she now wielded. This was when her manipulative instincts kicked in. Over time, Janet began to see these funds as an opportunity to enrich herself rather than a responsibility to others. The beginning of the crime. In late 2016, Janet Mello took a drastic turn in her life. She created a fake company called Child Health and Youth Lifelong Development, CHYLD. This company was set up to appear as though it was providing services to military families and their children. In reality, it was a fraudulent scheme designed for Janet to embezzle funds. The company was entirely fictional, and its only purpose was to siphon funds from the U.S. Army. Janet forged documents, presented them as legitimate, and manipulated her superiors into approving large sums of money. By falsifying signatures and creating counterfeit records, she was able to make everything appear as if the grants were legitimate. The Army, trusting Janet, continued to approve the grants. What started as a small-scale act of embezzlement soon turned into a massive criminal enterprise. Janet began to regularly siphon funds for personal gain, using manipulation and deception as her tools. She created an illusion of legitimacy that lasted for years, allowing her to live a life of luxury while others were unaware. Luxury living and excessive spending. With the money she embezzled, Janet Mello began to live a lavish lifestyle. She purchased 31 luxury homes in locations such as Texas, Colorado, and Maryland. These properties were not just investments, they were symbols of her power and greed. These homes were lavish estates and upscale residences that she used to establish herself as someone who had arrived at the top of society. In addition to real estate, Janet created an 82 vehicle collection, including high-end cars like Maseratis, Mercedes, and Ferraris. She was living a lifestyle that most people could only dream of. But her expenditures didn't stop at cars and homes. Janet spent millions on luxury jewelry and designer items, including a $923,000 jewelry purchase in a single day in 2019.
Lead investigators in this case will hold a press conference after Mello's sentencing. I'll be at the federal courthouse providing updates. Sarah Berry.
She had everything she wanted, but at what cost? These extreme expenditures were not just signs of wealth. They were manifestations of Janet's greed. The more she acquired, the more she wanted. And all of this came from illegally obtained funds, funds meant for military families and their children. Tax evasion and false declarations. Janet's crimes didn't stop with embezzlement. She also engaged in tax evasion by falsifying her income reports. From 2017 to 2022, she submitted false income declarations that led to over $31 million in tax losses for the government.
Stole money from programs to provide funds to military members and their families.
Each year, Janet underreported her income to reduce her tax liabilities. This was another layer of deception, and it was becoming clear that Janet had fully embraced the idea of manipulation and greed. Her ability to evade the IRS for so long was a testament to her skill in concealing her actions. Janet's crimes were becoming more complex and widespread, with each year bringing in more money and more fraud. The unraveling and the court case. Janet's lavish lifestyle eventually attracted the attention of authorities. The IRS and federal investigators began to scrutinize her finances. They discovered that her lifestyle was far beyond what her reported income could support. By 2024, a full investigation was underway. During a raid on Janet's home, authorities discovered her 31 luxury properties, 42 motorcycles, 35 vehicles, and millions of dollars worth of jewelry. Janet was arrested for mail fraud and falsifying tax returns, among other charges. She was eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison, and her assets were seized to cover the $140 million in losses caused by her crimes. The justice system had finally caught up with Janet, but the damage to the public trust and to the military's reputation was already done. The erosion of trust and societal impact. Janet Mello's story isn't just about financial loss. It's also about the erosion of trust. The Army, one of the most trusted institutions in the country, had been manipulated by one of its own employees. Janet used the power and trust placed in her to deceive and defraud the government. This highlights just how fragile trust can be and how manipulation can corrupt even the most trusted systems. Mello's crimes also reveal how easily greed can lead someone down a dark path. She was able to exploit the system for years, collecting millions of dollars for her own personal gain. The biggest question raised by this case is, how can society protect itself from people like Janet, who abuse power and trust for their own benefit? My thoughts and analysis. Janet Mello's case is a stark reminder of how people can use trust as a weapon to gain power and wealth. She represents the dangers of unchecked authority and growing greed. Her story also shows how society's trust can be taken for granted and the consequences that follow when that trust is broken. People in positions of power, like Janet, can manipulate their roles for personal gain, and this is a significant issue in many industries. The fact that Janet could maintain this facade for so many years raises important questions about transparency and accountability. In a world where money and power can easily manipulate systems, how can we safeguard institutions from similar frauds? This case also emphasizes the need for more oversight and checks and balances in organizations, especially those handling large amounts of public funds. Janet's ability to manipulate her position highlights the vulnerability of even the most secure systems. What do you think? How can we prevent these types of frauds from happening again in society? What steps should be taken to restore trust in institutions?